Hello, Chris. It's nice to see you today. Dr. Buck.
Good to see you too. Uh, can I turn off my audio for a second to call Kevin back?
I'm right here.
Yes.
Great.
Kevin's here with us. I will be making an introduction, so feel free to do what you guys need to do as well. So welcome, everyone. We're so happy to see you on Zoom, on Facebook, on YouTube. Thank you for being with us today with the Clearwater Baha'is. We're so happy to see all of you. And we're so happy for our special guests today, both very special guests, and we're so lucky that we're having them in one session. This week's topic is The Great Spirit Speaks, Voices of the Wise Ones. There is a very nice description of this on clearwaterbaha'is.org. I'll, for the purpose of brevity, truncate what I and you can read now on the website. So the Baha'i scriptures offer a treasure trove of wisdom. The sheer wealth of these texts staggers the imagination. For Baha'u'llah, nearly 20,000 unique works have been identified, comprising over 6 million words. The Bab, over 2,000 unique works have been identified, comprising almost 5 million words. For Abdu'l-Baha, over 30,000 unique works have been identified, comprising over 5 million words. That is one big Bible. In ancient times, the people of America were, through their northern regions, close to Asia, that is, separated from Asia by a strait. For this reason, it has been said that crossing had occurred. There are other signs which indicate communication. As to places whose people were not informed of the appearance of the prophets, such people are excused. In the Qur'án, it hath been revealed, in quotes, we will not chastise them if they had not been sent a messenger. Abdul-Baha's tablet to Amir Khan is remarkable and unique in the history of religions because it authenticates the appearance of messengers of God. In other words, culture heroes, wisdom bearers, prophets of God to ancient North America. This is one good example of Baha'i universalism. The tablet to Amir Khan by Abdu'l-Baha offers no names of any of these Native American messengers of God, but we don't have to look far to find them. Let's give one example. The Ganawida, the peacemaker. There is a Baha'i prophecy regarding the future of Native Americans in what has been characterized as the sole specific racial prophecy in all of the Baha'i scriptures. Baha'u'llah gives us this glimpse into the future. Attached great importance to the indigenous population of America. He says, for there can be no doubt that they will become so illumined as to enlighten the whole world. Perhaps this prophecy will become realized when both the ancient wisdom of the Native Americans is brought into harmony with Baha'i wisdom. Here's a similar prophecy from an authentic text of Deganawida's teachings. Thereupon, Deganawida stood up in the center of the gathering place. And then he said, first, I will answer what it means to say, now it is arriving, the good message. This indeed is what it means. When it stops the slaughter of your own people who live here on earth, then everywhere peace will come about by day and also by night. And it will come about that as one travels around, everyone will be related. Now again, secondly, I say, now it is arriving, the power. And this means that the different nations, all of the nations, will become just a single one. And the great law will come into being so that all now will be related to each other. And there will come to be just a single family. And in the future, in the days to come, this family will continue on. Now, in turn, the other, my third saying, now it is arriving, the peace. This means that everyone will become related, men and also women, and also the young people and the children. And when all are relatives, every nation, then there will be peace. Then there will be truthfulness, and that they will uphold hope and charity, so that it is a peace that will unite all of the people. Indeed, it will be as though they have but one mind, and they are a single person with only one body and one head and one life, which means that there will be unity when they are functioning, the good message, and also the power and the peace. These will be the principal things everybody will live by. These will be the great values among the people. Unquestionably, Quetzalcoatl is Mesoamerica's most celebrated sage, sovereign. Born in 1123 Common Era, Quetzalcoatl ruled over Tula, the Toltec capital, between 1153 and 1175 Common Era. This enlightened emperor inaugurated the Turquoise Age in ancient Tolan, the archaeological site of Tula in the Central Highlands in the heart of ancient Mexico. Quetzalcoatl challenged the sacrificial logic and militarism of ancient Mexican culture by abolishing the entrenched practice of human sacrifice, founding a functionally new religion. Quetzalcoatl taught prayer and penance. Upon this social and moral foundation, Quetzalcoatl established a new, flourishing civilization. Quite naturally, this incurred the wrath of powerful shaman sorcerers, guardians of the old religion. His arch nemesis, Tezcatlipoca, tricked and shamed Quetzalcoatl and forced him into exile from Tolan, never to return. Or would he? Yes, according to long-held prophetic tradition, Quetzalcoatl would one day return to reclaim his throne and reinstate Tula as the state capital. In the Europeanization of the Quetzalcoatl prophecy, Montezuma, the last Aztec emperor of Mexico, tragically mistook the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés for the return of Quetzalcoatl. The conquest, a collision of two worlds, would one day be reversed, according to the prophecy of Quetzalcoatl's return. Mesoamerica was clearly an area where a combined religious secular leadership pattern had evolved into an unusually high degree. It provided an exceptionally favorable cultural climate for a gifted individual of high station to make his historical mark on society. Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl may well have been such a person. I am not suggesting, the speakers are not suggesting that we may be confronted here with a Mesoamerican Buddha, Zoroaster, Jesus Christ, or Muhammad, for no comparable systematized body of religious doctrine seems to have stemmed from his life or teachings, but his impact on cult activities in Mesoamerica may have been considerable. This is a fair estimate of the cultural and religious importance of Quetzalcoatl. Like the Ganawida, who came centuries later and who did leave behind laws and teachings, Quetzalcoatl stopped the unnecessary shedding of human blood and promoted a fresh and vibrant civilization. Popularly, although unofficially, Baha'is widely believe that Quetzalcoatl may well be comparable to Buddha, Zoroaster, Jesus Christ, or Muhammad. This central teaching of the Baha'i faith, that all of God's messengers evince essentially one and the same spirit, applies not only to the familiar founders of faith, like Abraham, Moses, Christ, and Muhammad, but to every prophet who appeared to every people in every place. In a speech he gave in Paris, Abdu'l-Baha said, as much referring to the messengers of God, "The greatest power of the Holy Spirit exists in the divine manifestations of the truth. Through the power of the Spirit, the heavenly teachings has been brought into the world of humanity. Through the power of the Spirit, life everlasting has come to the children of men. Through the power of the Spirit, the divine glory has shone from the east to the west. And through the power of the same Spirit will the divine virtues of humanity become manifest." And we have some resources online on clearwaterbaha'is.org. Without much further ado, I want to introduce Kevin Locke and Christopher Buck. Kevin Locke is a world-famous visionary hoop dancer, preeminent player of the Indigenous Northern Plains flute, traditional storyteller, cultural ambassador, recording artist, and educator. Kevin is Lakota and Anishinaabe. Please correct me, Kevin, if I pronounce it wrong. While his instructions were received from his immediate family and community, from extended family in every part of the world, Kevin has learned many lessons in global citizenship and how we can draw from our individual heritages to create a vibrant, evolving global civilization, embracing and celebrating our cultural heritage. Now, I can talk more about his history. We have this online on the Clearwater Baha'i site, and we will be posting this in the video. We recommend that you take a look at his beautiful bio. I'll just say this, that as a folk artist, he uses his talents to teach others about his specific tribal background. His special joy is working with children and on the reservations to ensure the survival and growth of the indigenous culture. And also, for further reference, Kevin Locke in 2021 with Christopher Buck teamed up to teach an online course through the Wilmette Institute called The Great Spirit Speaks, Voices of the Wise Ones. And it's offered twice in 2021 by popular demand, and it will be offered again in February of 2022. You can access this by going to wilmetteinstitute.org. Wilmette is spelled WILMETTE, institute.org. And you will be able to find under courses, The Great Spirit Speaks. And of course, Christopher Buck, he has published broadly as an independent scholar in a wide range of fields, including American studies, Native American studies, African American studies, religious studies, Islamic studies, and Baha'i studies. He is author of several books, such as Baha'i Faith, The Basics, which you can find online, and God and Apple Pie. He's also revised this book from Religious Myths and Visions of America in 2009. And he also wrote Alain Locke, Faith and Philosophy, Paradise and Paradigm, Symbol and Secret. There are several great works that Chris has written, and I don't want to detract from the presentation. I've done a long introduction. So Chris, I've also had a presentation with Dr. Buck at some point in the past. You can look at some videos we had. I really want to get to the meat of the presentation, which is them. So I'm going to stop the introduction, although there's much more to be said. And I want to thank you all for coming. And thank you, Dr. Buck. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us today.
Thank you. Kevin, would you like to begin with a prayer?
Oh, a prayer? Sure, I can say a prayer.
Put you on the spot. I just thought I'd love to hear you do that.
Okay. Blessed is the spot and the house and the place and the city and the heart, the mountain and the refuge and the cave, the valley and the land, and the sea and the island and the meadow, where mention of God hath been made, and his praise glorified. Ya Baha'u'llah.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
I want to tell our audience that this is a very important prayer for this whole question of Indigenous Messengers of God to the Americas. On October 17th of this year, the Patricia Locke Foundation, named after Kevin's mother, who was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2005, presented a 45-minute pre-recorded video, and it's going through its final editing and should hopefully go online soon. George Hawley from Alaska chanted this prayer, "Blessed is the spot," in his indigenous language, and it was a beautiful rendition. So look forward to the posting of this video presented to the 2021 Parliament of the World's Religions. Kevin, do you have anything to add?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to just mention something that might be an interesting introduction to this topic, an anecdote that I experienced the very first time I ever went to Florida, and that was, I think it was like 1977, or it could have been 78. And I was invited to perform at the annual Miccosukee Indian Arts Festival, and that was BC, before casinos back then. And when the Miccosukee tribe was exploring different revenue options, and so they were working on tourism, and that was one of the strategies they had, was to create this festival, Indian Art Festival. And so then I just flew down from here, close by to where I'm at in Bismarck, the state capital of North Dakota. I flew down, and of course it was amazingly warm in December when I got down there. So I got over that initial shock. But then a real interesting thing that occurred to me when I got to the village, the Miccosukee village, is a 40-mile bend along the Tamiami Trail. Just they call it Calle Ocho, or 8th Avenue in Miami. Then it turns into the Tamiami Trail. But anyway, when I got down there in the village, I realized that nobody could speak English, young or old. I was trying to visit with a lot of the kids there, and I discovered that there was no English speakers at all. And I think it was the next morning, I saw a young man, and he happened to be able to speak English. So then I commented on that to him, and he said, "Yeah, the people here don't use English language, don't use any kind of European language." And then I said, "Well, what about these kids? Do they go to school?" No, he said, "They don't go to school." And I said, "That's really interesting." I said, why is that?" And then he pointed around the village there, and he says, "If you look around here, you see there's lots of old people, a lot of people over 100 years old." And now this was like in the 70s, so it's quite a few years ago. And he said, "These are our grandparents here, and they grew up living on the land, off the land. They never ate processed food or chemicals, and they're very healthy. And when our elders here were born, there were no white people here." He said there was a trading post in Miami. I think you said it was started in the early 1900s, 1912 or something. And the people, when they made that trading post over in Miami, they get in their dugouts and they go down there. And that's the way our elders here, they all were raised up like that. And but our elders, they tell us, this is what they tell us. He says, don't join that culture. He's talking about the immigrant population. Don't join that culture. He said, of course, now I think about these older people, they grew up, there's no white people, no immigrant populations there. And then just overnight, you could see that huge explosion of population in Florida that happened overnight for them. And so these older people, they told the younger people, they says, don't join that culture. They said the reason why is, as fast as it appeared, it'll all roll up and disappear that fast. And if you're standing in that world, you'll get rolled up and disappear with it. And when he said that, then he says, so we respect our elders. He said, we respect them. And he says, I myself, I don't really believe that. He says, but if it was up to me, I would send my kids to school. He says, but they're still alive. And so we honor them, we respect them. He said, they give us these teachings from the breath maker. He said, that's where I heard about the breath maker, that second day I was in Florida, second day. And then right at that point, I wanted to go back in the airport at Miami, get on the flight and go back home. I didn't want to get rolled up. And I wasn't a Baha'i then. But then when I became a Baha'i, then I realized what these elders are talking about. they're not talking about, they may or may not be talking about a physical evaporation of that population. I don't know. But as a Baha'i, then I realized what they're talking about is firmness in the covenant. That's what the elders are talking about. Firmness in the covenant. If you want to read about it quite a bit, there's this man, his name was Buffalo Tiger. He was the chairman of the Miccosukee at that time. He could speak English. He did learn it. He did not read or write, but he could speak English. But if you read this book, you'll see so often throughout it's kind of an autobiography, he references this breath maker. The breath maker is the manifestation of God, or the messenger of God that appeared in that part of the world down there in Florida, and that region down there. And the breath maker brought laws and teachings and prophecies, and he warned the people. And this is what those Miccosukee elders were talking about. There would be an influence that would come that would try to pull the people away from their covenant and cause them to become disoriented, confused, and lost. And that's what I heard about. Like the first day, second day I arrived in Florida, and I didn't really understand it at that time. But after reading about Buffalo Tiger, then I began to sink in that the elders were simply concerned about future generations being unmoored or being moved from their position of firmness in the covenant to just confusion and the forces of disintegration and irreligion. And this is very, very common. When my late mother grew up, this is what she heard constantly from the older people, that they had to hold to their teachings, these great ones, these holy ones that have appeared on this land. And and she did a lot of research on this, but she did not know about the tablet to Amir Khan. But anyway, I just want to use this little anecdote as an intro, since it's about the place where a lot of you, I don't know if everybody on the Zoom call lives in Florida, but I just wanted to mention that, since a lot of you do now, or you live in the land of the breath maker. And this is what the indigenous people of Florida, they, through these teachings, they offered asylum to people escaping slavery, chattel slavery. And they fled to Florida because there were indigenous people there who had a way of life, who knew how to live in that region. And so they came in droves to Florida for asylum from the persecution of the hell of living in chattel slavery. And the indigenous people there opened it all up for them and gave them places where they could make their villages. And I remember also the first time I was in Florida, I was with oh gosh, I can't think of his name. But I was walking around with him, and there was a lot of Black people over in one part of the village there. And we went over there. He said, "Come here, let's go talk to these people." And they didn't use one word of English. All these Black people, there was about 30 or 40 of them. They all spoke, they weren't speaking Miccosukee. The Miccosukee speak Hijiti. They spoke the Muskogee, the language up by around Lake Okeechobee. It's over on the west side, over around Brighton, but that's the language that they spoke over there, all these Black people. But they're all descendants of the people that escaped chattel slavery. But you see, this is a teaching of the breath maker. You can't treat people like that. It's obscene. And so this is the spiritual foundation of where a lot of you reside there in Florida. Anyway, I just thought I'd use that as an intro, and I'd like to turn this over to Christopher, and I'm really happy to have that you're hosting this, the Clearwater Baha'i community, and appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank John and also Jeremiah for hosting this event. Can I turn on screen sharing?
Absolutely. Yes, you can.
Yes.
Yes, they should have that enabled.
All right, I'm going to play a PowerPoint.
We don't see your screen yet. Okay, now we're seeing it.
Can everybody see the screen now?
Yes, sir. We can see it. Yes, sir.
Okay. This has been previously presented but upgraded for this presentation, which is why last night I put Baha'i Explorations Clearwater. So the alternative title is Indigenous Messengers of God, which is the title of an ongoing series that Kevin and I have been doing on BahaiTeachings.org. I don't know how many of you look at that website. It's the most popular Baha'i website in terms of viewers and hits and all that. It's not an official Baha'i website, but it has the respect of the Baha'i institutions. That's my understanding. Very successful in teaching with a number of online declarations. Now let me see if I can move this gallery. I just closed it. That's so I can read. You see on this slide, the photo. Now this is a photo from the, I believe, 1975 Green Light Expedition in Cusco, Peru. And the sign, this was a photo published in the Baha'i World in black and white for the commemoration of Rahia Khanum's, Hand of the Cause of God, Rahia Khanum's Green Light Expedition. And the sign in Spanish reads, Baha'u'llah is the return of Viracocha, one of the Indigenous Messengers of God that we write about in the series. It is ongoing. David Langness is editing a couple of, has just recently edited more articles on Patricia Locke. I'd like now to ask Kevin to recite an Indigenous land and spiritual acknowledgement in the form of a prayer with the hope and encouragement that the Baha'is in Clearwater and in other locations in Florida will consider using this and adding whatever they feel inspired to do to develop their own Indigenous land and spiritual acknowledgements and make contact with their local Indigenous community, wherever that may be. So let's go to slide 2.
Chris, if you could close the color palette, that's part of the reason you can't change the slide. So we're seeing the color palette still on your screen.
Thank you. Good to have a tech person.
Right, now everything should work properly.
Thank you. That saved the day. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, I read this. Grandfather above, we acknowledge the holy ones you have sent upon this land to kindle the sacred fire in the hearts of us, your grandchildren. We are eternally grateful that in ancient times you have sent the peacemaker, white buffalo calf woman, breath maker, sweet medicine, and a myriad others to breathe holiness and beauty upon this turtle island, North America, and your grandchildren here, and to teach us your laws, and to enable us to draw close to you, and especially to love and cherish our relative, Grandmother Earth, and all that dwell upon her. In particular, we acknowledge the holy ones you have sent to the spot upon which we stand, and the nations and kindreds who have been the custodians of that sacred trust. We ask that you breathe upon and fan the embers of the fire of love and faith in our hearts and minds, that our footsteps may tread your path, and we may restore peace and order upon this blessed land.
Thank you, Kevin. I love this prayer. And of course, here it's of particular note, given our Florida audience, that you mentioned breath maker.
Mm-hmm.
So here's our disclaimer. I've contributed about 375 articles to Baha'u'llah.org. This is, some of them are in collaboration with Kevin Locke and others. And before each article, there's always a disclaimer, which I quote here. The views expressed in our content reflect individual perspectives and do not represent the official views of the Baha'i faith. Now, we're going to upload this I will upload this updated PowerPoint after the talk today, so you can download. The previous version is already online.
Sorry, Chris, you'll have to unmute yourself. I accidentally hit your mute button. I apologize.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
That was a beautiful prayer that Kevin has just prayed. And I pray and hope that our Florida audience will do the same. Note that Breathmaker, who is the indigenous manifestation of God, if I dare say so, in Florida, would be principally the one that would be acknowledged. Indigenous land acknowledgements have been done for some years all over the world, especially in Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. What Kevin and I have proposed adding is a spiritual dimension. So that's what the purpose of this Indigenous land and spiritual acknowledgement is, in the form of a prayer. All of our work, our articles on Baha'u'llah.org. The series is now in its 80s. There are more articles that are being edited by David Langness, the editor for Baha'u'llah.org. And before each and every one of our articles, this disclaimer appears. Quote, the views expressed in our content reflect individual perspectives and do not represent the official views of the Baha'i faith. We invite feedback, and also want to tell you that we have uploaded a previous version of this PowerPoint. After this talk today, I will upload this version, and you can study. So there's a takeaway from this talk. You can actually study the material that we're presenting on your own. This is dedicated to Patricia Locke. And you can read about her on this slide, but what I wanted to point out to you on the next slide is that in 2005, Patricia Locke was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame, a great honor. Among many other things that she did as a world-renowned educator, Patricia helped found 17 tribally run Lakota colleges. She was always stressing the importance of preserving Lakota language, religion, and culture. Of particular interest for this presentation is that in September 1993, she was part of the 1993 United Indigenous Peoples delegation at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago, which was the centenary commemoration of the 1893 Parliament of the World's Religions, where the Baha'i faith was first publicly mentioned in the United States. Then, shortly thereafter, in October 1993, she was elected to the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States as the first Native American woman to be elected to that august institution. And what I want to note here is that she maintained her dual religious identity as a Lakota and a Baha'i. This is a very common practice among Indigenous Baha'is that we should keep in mind first and foremost, and we'll explain why as we go through this presentation. Part of the delegation itself, which was, I believe, over 50 Native American and other elders and faith keepers, presented a resolution which, from my understanding, unanimously passed except for one vote, but was later overturned and therefore not officially adopted. It states in part, "We as Indigenous peoples and Native nations, honoring our ancestors and our future generations, do hereby declare our present and continuing survival within our sacred homelands in the Western Hemisphere. Since time immemorial, we have lived in a spiritual way in keeping with our sacred laws, principles, and values given to us by the Creator. Our ways of life are based on respect for Mother Earth, a sacred regard for all relations, and the survival of our languages, cultures, and traditions. In the year of the Indigenous Peoples, that's 1993, while the United Nations Universal Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is still being prepared, we ask for solidarity in our cause from the religions of the world." And then skipping to the later part of it, there are a series of resolutions that are offered here. The first one says, "Acknowledgement of the myriad of messengers of the Creator, the great mystery, to the peoples of the Western Hemisphere." Kevin, would you like to comment on the importance of rediscovering and affirming the Indigenous spiritual heritage of the Western Hemisphere?
Oh, you said comment on the rediscovering, right?
Yeah, didn't you say that in a sense this is sort of like half or the other half of the world's spiritual heritage?
Well, yeah, because geographically, the Earth is divided into hemispheres, of course, north, south, and then east and west. And so there's the Eastern Hemisphere, which is half the planet, and then the Western Hemisphere, which is the other half. And this half of the planet is called the Americas, North, Central, and South America. So then historically, this half of the planet, the spiritual heritage, has been people have benefited from the spiritual heritage, but have not recognized it. I say benefit, and because 3/5 of the world's foods are derived from the Western Hemisphere, and then in every instance, the indigenous people who they are identified as originators of that food, they don't identify that themselves. They attribute all this to these holy ones who brought these gifts as heavenly gifts from on high, whether it's corn or beans or whether it's chocolate or tomatoes or whatever it is, potatoes. These are all recognized as divine gifts, and in many instances can cite the details, the place, the circumstances around which these were received, all these holy gifts. So just to answer your to address your respond to your question, Chris, yeah. So now I think is a time when people can start to awaken to this heritage, really not just this, but all the global heritage, and really to celebrate that, and then in turn to view ourselves as legitimate heirs to all these riches of the human heritage, whether it's from the Eastern Hemisphere or Western Hemisphere.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
You know, as I recall from some of the talks in 1912 in America, Abdu'l-Baha would repeatedly say words to this effect, that to become a Baha'i, you need to acknowledge the past messengers of God. So if you're a Christian, to become a Baha'i, you need to recognize Muhammad, for example. That's a common example that's given in these discourses by Abdu'l-Baha, whose centenary we are celebrating this year. Extending that logic to the spiritual heritage of the Western Hemisphere, Kevin and I are not proposing that a formal acknowledgement be extended to individual Indigenous messengers of God in the Americas, but to them as a category based on the authentic and authorized translation of the tablet to Amir Khan, in which, as Kevin and I understand it, Abdu'l-Baha is clearly establishing the category of Indigenous messengers of God to the Americas. On a further note, the reference to the Bering Strait crossing, which is very controversial among Indigenous peoples, really bothered the late Paula Bidwell, who was one of my students in the Wilmette Institute course on the Book of Certitude and the Gems of Divine Mysteries. And I encouraged her to write a paper on Indigenous messengers of God, and then to present it, I think it was to the 2011 Erfon conference, the Baha'i Studies Conference in New Helen in Michigan, in Davison, Michigan. And she was the 25th, I believe, the final presenter. Her paper is online. I have a couple of articles with her where I've interviewed her early in the Indigenous Messengers of God series. And she was very bothered by this Abdu'l-Baha's mention of the Bering Straits theory. And the way that she resolved it in her own mind was Abdu'l-Baha's phrase, "It hath been said." Kevin, would you like to comment on this?
Well, yeah, that that was the prevailing view at that time, and I think it still is a prevailing view. But I just think that many people will use that citation or that theory as a way to discount Indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, just to discount them as also as immigrants. But I think we all know that mankind is one. We all have the same common lineage, but I think many people do use that as a way just to kind of push indigeneity out of their consciousness, or just to somehow ignore it. And so I think, to me, this is where some people might possibly take offense. But you have to put this into perspective, because one of the indicators that scholars use to assign antiquity to any given population is linguistic diversity. So then when you think of linguistic diversity, I think if you can look on Wikipedia, I can't remember the details, but there's something like 140 language families in the world. There might be a little more. And there's something like 7,000 languages spoken in the world. But all those languages are divided into language families. For instance, basically all the languages from India to Iceland are categorized as Indo-European. Now there's some big groups in there you got to take out, like the Semitic languages. They're not Indo-European. The Turkic languages are not Indo-European. Finnish, Estonian, Sami, those are not Indo-European. But basically, Basque in France, they are not. But most of the other ones, think of all those languages, whether it's Icelandic or Urdu, those are all Indo-European languages. But so now But so that's just one of the language families in the world. Basically, most all the languages in Africa, they trace them back to like 3 or 4 language families. There's a few more, but nearly half of the language families in the world are in the Western Hemisphere. So that, some scholars say that that's a sign of antiquity in a given area. So here this is like the most linguistically diverse place on the planet, North America, but somehow we just ignore that and say, oh, they just got here. No. So I've been here for a long time. Okay, sorry it took so long.
And there may be a combination of both. Some recent archaeological discoveries, I sent you a link to one of them, Kevin, recently. They're finding artifacts that predate the prevailing theory of the migration. So the important thing, from my understanding, is that indigenous peoples are the original peoples of the Americas. So one of Patricia Locke's presentations in the 1993 Parliament of World Religions, this is an image taken from the official Parliament handbook of talks, presentations, and it's titled God's Messengers to the Native Peoples of the Western Hemisphere. So Jacqueline Left-Hand Bull, as she's now referred to, Kevin and I have been in contact with her. We're waiting for her to come back from the Holy Land. As you know, she's on the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. And we're hoping to hear from her reminiscences of this and other presentations. Kevin Locke is mentioned, but Kevin, you didn't make it to that parliament, right?
No, I wasn't there.
And then Patricia Locke is here. And the description says this: there have been, quote, myriad messengers to the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere throughout the centuries. These indigenous nations, meaning First Nations, of course, were organized around a spiritual rather than a political or secular worldview. The prophetic aspects of these indigenous belief systems will be explored. Now, I tried to find a talk, a recorded cassette tape for this. I did not succeed, but I found another one. And this would be presented for the first time. But before we get to that, there's an indigenous Baha'i artist named Nadima Agard, who was in Standing Rock, or that part of South Dakota, from 1995 to 1997, working there. And Patricia Locke gave her a paper, a typescript, which Nadima has kept all these years and recently sent to Kevin and I. This scan, here's 2 pages from the scan. This is the first time that, if this presentation is made public by the Clearwater Baha'is, this will be the first time that, and after I upload this after a presentation, that part of this manuscript has been shared. So we believe that this was part of her 1993 presentation. As for her other presentation, and I'm not limiting it to 2, she may have been part of the declaration that we just read parts of earlier, is an archival audio recording. This is a digital file of tape 512 entitled Native American Women's Wisdom, Our Spiritual Selves. And this is part of what's called the Teach 'em cassette tapes that are preserved in the 1993 Parliament of the World's Religions records at DePaul University in Chicago. I've sent a request to the Council for the Parliament of World's Religions requesting permission to publish the part or all of this, and I'm still waiting to hear back. I don't know if you can hear this, but I want to play part of her audio. Are we good with that?
It should be fine as long as when you shared the screen originally, you tick the button that said share computer audio.
Okay, can you see this screen, iTunes screen?
No, we don't see your screen, but if you play it, we should hear it. We'll see. If not, we'll redo the screen share.
Do I need to redo the screen share?
We don't hear anything if you're playing it right now.
All right, let me play it now. So Patricia Locke was the first panelist, and this is her beginning her talk.
Welcome to this program, recorded at the Council for a Parliament of the World's Religions, held August 28th through September 4th, 1993, in Chicago, Illinois. Now to our program.
Where Native women are going to be discussing their spiritualities and their things about the theft of that spirituality that is occurring all over the world today. My name is Pamina Yellowbird, and I'll be your moderator this afternoon. First, on a speaker's list is Ms. Patricia Locke. She is a Lakota woman from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation in North and South Dakota. She works with the Association of American Indian Affairs.
Good afternoon. It's interesting that we have two Lakota women here, and also from the Mandan Hidatsa Rikara Nation. I thought it would be important to tell you a little bit first about our valid belief system. We think that the white buffalo calf woman, we know the white buffalo calf woman came to us about 636 AD. That is, of course, an estimate, and we are basing that estimate on the keeper of the pipe, the 19th keeper of the pipe, since he, the messenger of God, gave this pipe to our people, estimating that 70 years is a lifetime. So we have multiplied 70 by 19, and that gives us a rough idea of the origin of our religion. You should know that having a woman bring the message of God to a people is quite extraordinary. There are not many in this hemisphere, many messengers or manifestations of God that were women. Indeed, in the world, there are not as many women messengers of God as there are men messengers or manifestations of God. I believe, and my experience in life has shown me, that this kind of elevates the status of women. In fact, we even worry about bringing the status of our men up a little bit. So many of the concerns of equity in the predominant society are something we're a little surprised at sometimes, but we do appreciate those concerns. But in our case, participation of women at all levels of religious life, secular life, is quite important, and still permeates our lives and gives us a sense of power, I think you might say. The white buffalo calf woman, in giving the 7 ceremonies to our people, incorporated women in every aspect of these ceremonies. These ceremonies teach us all of the beauties of life, all of the moral and ethical standards of life that we must uphold. And women are a primary force in Lakota, Dakota life.
Okay, I'm going to stop there.
Welcome to this program, recorded at the Council for a Parliament of the World's Religion.
Was that audible?
We were able to catch bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, we could hear something.
Okay. All right, that was very important. A very important recent find based on Kevin and my ongoing research. All right, let's set this up. You know, I know time is rather short. There should be time for discussion. So let me go through this rather quickly. And Kevin and I encourage our viewers to download this presentation later today. So Patricia Locke's favorite passage, Baha'i passage, was this universalism from Baha'u'llah, quote, "Unto the cities of all nations he hath sent his messengers." Abdu'l-Baha's indigenous prophecy has been mentioned before. Attach great importance to the indigenous population of America. Likewise, these Indians, should they be educated and guided, there can be no doubt that they will become so illumined as to enlighten the whole world. By the way, in the tablet to Amir Khan, Abdu'l-Baha says in Persian, al-Batay, which means undoubtedly. So there was no doubt in Abdu'l-Baha's mind about indigenous messengers of God, about their past and their future destiny. Well, how will this prophecy come true? It won't be automatic. It's not a matter of if, but of how and when. So what is the process of this prophecy coming true? That's an important question. Well, the conditions have to be right and ripe. And this is a process that will be fulfilled over time progressively. In other words, the prophecy is not self-executing. That's where we come in. We can actually hasten the fulfillment of this prophecy, and here's the basis for saying so. In these two quotes from the Universal House of Justice, I'm going to just read the red. It says, "Thereby hastening the period prophesied by the Master when the Indian peoples of America would become a source of spiritual illumination to the world, and similarly to accelerate the dawn of the day when they will be so, quote, illumined as to enlighten the whole world." Now, this will not happen automatically by indigenous peoples on their own, according to the statement from the Universal House of Justice. It says in the last paragraph, in this regard, well, it's a beautiful statement. Indeed, the purpose of the coming of Baha'u'llah is to lift the yoke of oppression from his loved ones, to liberate all the people of the world, and to provide the means for their abiding happiness. In this regard, the tablets of the Divine Plan addressed by Abdu'l-Baha to North America make it clear that the destiny of the Native Americans as an illumined and fulfilled people is linked to the quality of their response to the revelation of Baha'u'llah. This is in a letter dated February 12, 2002. Kevin and I propose that in the course of the progressive fulfillment of this prophecy needs to be a synergy that takes place between Baha'i and indigenous teachings. The issue of parity, which is not mentioned in this particular PowerPoint slide, is very important. In other words, we have to approach indigenous peoples and their cultures, and especially their spiritual traditions, with great respect. In a sense, with equality, even though, you know, the Baha'i revelation is the latest revelation in the series of progressive revelations that have been given to humanity. the Universal House of Justice says that we should respect these religions. Quote, Baha'is believing in all revealed religious truth of past ages as an unfoldment of one divine plan have respect for the customs and traditions relating to these religions and cultures. They desire to preserve the cultural elements that contribute to the well-being of mankind. This, in Canada, where I lived for 14 years, the preservation of cultures was considered a Baha'i principle. When I came back to the US, Baha'is were shocked. They had never heard this principle before, but here is one enunciation of that principle. Why is that principle important? Because I think it will contribute to the Baha'i worldview and understanding by enriching our perspective on the world. Kevin, would you like to read this message from the House to the Baha'i gathering in Arizona?
Okay, sure. This is a message to a Baha'i Unity Conference in Ganado, 18 May 1972. That's on the Dineta, Navajo country. The all-wise creator of earth and heaven has, from the beginning, which has no beginning, sent to his peoples divine messengers to guide them to the straight path. These wise ones have come to establish the unity of the kingdom in human hearts. This great evolutionary process of building the organic unity of the human race has entered a new stage with this mighty message of Baha'u'llah. His voice is the voice of the Great Spirit. His love for humankind is the force of the new age. He who sends the rain, who causes the sun and the stars to shine, the rivers to flow, the winds to blow, and the earth to give forth her bounties, has, in this great day, sent to all mankind Baha'u'llah. It is this great one who has opened the door of divine knowledge to every soul. It is his teachings that will establish world unity and bring about universal peace. The old ones have all longed for this sweet message. Praise God that you have found it. Universal House of Justice.
Thank you, Kevin.
Mhm.
So a couple more quotes and then a couple more slides, and then we'll maybe open it up for discussion. So in the red at the bottom left, the House says, Baha'is encourage Indians in South America, for example, to see and reverence the profound spiritual truths, which are to be found in both their pre-Christian religions, meaning their indigenous religions, and in the Catholicism, which in later centuries has to varying degrees supplanted and overlaid their archaic faiths. And then on the left in the red, the House also encourages Indian arts and music and fostering in the Indians' pride in their heritage. So if the House says that the Radio Baha'i Ecuador should do that, I think that's a message to us as well. And here's a photo on the right of Radio Baha'i Ecuador. Now, just to reinforce this category of Indigenous Messengers of God, without we don't have time to go through them individually. This is a message from the House of Justice as well. Quote, Baha'u'llah made no mention of Buddha. And if it had not been for Abdu'l-Baha's statement, we would not have been in a position to state definitely that Buddha had been a manifestation of God. And then skipping over to the right, we must just accept that there are undoubtedly many prophetic figures of whom all authentic record has been lost. So in the bottom, just a historical note, Abdul-Baha added Krishna as well to our list of recognized messengers of God. And then according to Kevin and I, this is our private understanding, that we hope will at some point perhaps be acknowledged by the institutions. That's up to the institutions, of course, and their own wisdom and timing. But in the tablet to Amir Khan, Abdu'l-Baha also added Indigenous Messengers of God sent to the Americas as a class or a category. So we don't need to make, as scholars say, an ontological commitment to each of or any or all of the Indigenous messengers individually, but we can do so collectively. And here is a facsimile of the tablet to Amir Khan with the original Persian transliterated for this very important statement. Undoubtedly, in those regions, referring to the Americas, the call of God must have been raised in ancient times, but it hath been forgotten now. Well, it was forgotten during Abdu'l-Baha's lifetime because of the Bureau of Indigenous Affairs in the US and the government of Canada taking Indigenous children, removing them from their parents and taking them far away into residential boarding schools where speaking their Indigenous language and anything connected with their native identity was robbed. What we call this is cultural genocide. The government of Canada has recently apologized for this, especially with the discovery of graves of children discovered at these residential schools. So I'm going to close here because we have, we go through a list of Indigenous Messengers of God. Here are 6 of them, including Breathmaker, which is covered in part 40 of our series. 6 through 10 with Quetzalcoatl being number 6, Viracocha number 7. Here's 11 through 15. 16 through 20, and 21 through 23 with more to come. So I'd like to maybe invite the moderators to open this up for discussion, unless you have any last words, Kevin?
Oh, no, I don't think I do. But you know, that there is a lot of information coming out on boarding schools. I just saw there was a PBS special, nationwide special that aired. I think it was Thursday or Friday, or anyway, this past week. So that got a lot of attention, and this is exactly why in Florida, the elders, like the Miccosukee elders, did everything they could to prevent their kids from going to school. And here at Standing Rock, I had my mom's uncle, who I remember really well. Kids were forced to go to school, and they had legal people, truant officers going around to round up the kids. And my mom had an uncle who was really a incredible storehouse of traditional knowledge, and he was being taught by his elders, but the schools were interfering with that, and he was so intent on getting all this traditional knowledge and not going to school that he had a scheme, and they'd force him to school, but what he'd go to school early, and he would collect rattlesnakes and put them in the teacher's drawers. So he did that, and then he also was really skilled at getting hornets' nests too, and he'd stick those in their teachers' closets. And so then one by one, he was banned from every school in the whole region. The truant officer would go get him, and they'd drop him off at the school, and then the school people would prohibit him from entering the building, and they'd send him back. He was notorious. But anyway, that's just a kind of a humorous anecdote I wanted to mention. But yeah, for the most part, though, these, as you said, these schools were really effective. It was a strategy of the founder of the boarding school movement, Pratt. His stated purpose was kill the Indian. That was what he said. Kill the Indian, save the man. So that effectively killing the Indian was to try to efface their identity and heritage which is essentially a spiritual identity and heritage derived from their belief in the covenant of God as taught by these holy ones.
Thank you, Kevin. So Abdu'l-Baha's statement hath been forgotten. Remember that which hath been forgotten can also be rediscovered and remembered. And this is part of the process that we're doing in this presentation and elsewhere. Any questions?
So what do you guys know about this breath maker of Florida? Is there any reference people can find to learn more about this Florida message?
Well, Kevin, you want to hold that book up again?
Okay, A Life in the Everglades by Buffalo Tiger, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not all about Breathmaker, but you can see that it's just throughout the book, he references the importance of Breathmaker in his traditional upbringing in Florida. In Florida, you know, a lot of people do say that the current tribes in Florida, there's the two. There's the Seminole and there's the Miccosukee. They say that they're really not from Florida. They're from further north, but you have to realize that the Florida, the people from Florida, do not really share the same cultural traits as their relatives to the north. So I know in history books they say that the Florida tribes, I don't really know them, but they say they're like Calusa. Gosh, there's so many that are present when Europeans arrived. They say that they were decimated, but I don't think that's possible because the current tribes in Florida, they have all of the cultural traits of the kind of a circum-Caribbean cultural pattern, you know, where their houses, their agricultural techniques, their medicinal knowledge, all of these things that are part of the indigenous Floridian culture, those, they didn't just materialize those things out of the ether. In other words, there were a lot of people down there who were not decimated, who escaped genocide. And these people were amalgamated into the current, what are known as the Miccosukee and Seminole tribes, because their culture, the original Florida culture, just permeates. Now, that's not in the books. That's my understanding, my personal understanding of what happened in Florida.
That's interesting.
Can you see the screen, my screen here?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, so here's the article, part 40. And Kevin and I have been very selective and careful about our sources. And we quote from, Buffalo Tiger here. And I'll just read this. Traditional Miccosukee people always have great respect for this land, this year, and life itself. They believe the Breathmaker created the land and all living things. Breathmaker taught us how to live on and protect the land and how to love nature. He taught us how to understand other people, but to maintain our customs and culture. Since Breathmaker put this land for us to live on and care for, money cannot buy the land. Breathmaker created us out of the clay. It happens to be brown muck, so we turned out to be brown persons. We are Breathmaker's people. People used to be more in control because they knew Breathmaker's law. It's the only law we know. It is simple. We didn't make that law. Breathmaker thought that was the type of law we must use, and we lived with it. Breathmaker talked to us after we were created. He told us, I will return one day, carry on what I have taught you to live by, or otherwise I will destroy you. We were told, but before Breathmaker returns, we will see signs like people changing to be disrespectful and people doing many wrong things. You'll probably see more hurricanes, tornadoes, and earthquakes.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So the Miccosukee tribe, from the Florida perspective, is in South Florida, correct? Is that where we will find these people?
No, there's a big community up there in the Clearwater. Is that near Tampa? It's near Tampa, is that right?
Yeah, we're in Tampa Bay, yes.
Yeah. There's a big community over there in the Tampa area. They basically in Florida, there's two language groups. There's the Hijiti, which is the main one, and then there's the Muskogee. And back, I think in the 30s, a lot of the people who were forcibly removed from Florida relocated to Oklahoma. A lot of the ones in Oklahoma converted to Christianity, I think mostly Southern Baptist. And so then this Council of Churches, Southern Baptist, they would get these people to come down, like the relatives to come down to Florida to proselytize and convert the Florida relatives. And so then there were these two brothers living in Florida. They were really great leaders. One of them was named Ingram Billy, and one was named Josie. I think it was a Josie Billy. And they split. So one of these brothers, I think it was the Josie Billy, decided to convert to Christianity. And so then people who followed him, they became the Seminole tribe of Florida. And this other brother, Ingram Billy, he decided to reject Christianity. So then a large faction followed him. And so that's why you have these two political entities in Florida. You have the Seminole tribe of Florida, and you have the Miccosukee tribe of Florida, but they're all one family. it's just one family. And so then you'll see they go back and forth, somebody who's Miccosukee can quit that and join the Seminole and vice versa, because they're all siblings to each other. And now there is one other group in Florida that they speak and these, like the most of them, like 90% they speak Hijiti, which is it's a language. They really speak it down on Tamiami Trail. But then there's another group that speak Muskogee. It's more of a Creek northern language, and that's the ones over in Big Cypress on the west side of Lake Okeechobee. But they're still quite. It's probably like related, like maybe like English to German. German English is a Germanic language, but you can't necessarily have a conversation with a German unless they already speak English or vice versa. It's that way with Hijiti and Muskogee too. That's probably way too much information. I don't know if I derailed your question. Sorry.
No. I'm just trying to learn more. The people here are just trying to learn more about these beautiful cultures, and I was going to say differences, but really, what makes everyone unique. It's interesting to know. There is a question here from online as well that says, have you found that in all the indigenous tribes have in their history teachings of their spiritual heritage and a knowledge of the contributions they are needed to make to the greater society?
Oh, does everybody have that? Well, just like Christopher was saying earlier, that it was the stated policy, especially the U.S. government, was first of all was extermination of indigenous people, and then especially Florida, they wanted to eliminate indigenous people because they harbored slaves, and so that's why the southern states appropriated all those a lot of money through Congress. So those are the most expensive per person wars the U.S. ever fought, was to eradicate the indigenous people out of Florida. There three wars were waged there, but that's beside the point. But failing that extermination, then there's all these other policies, notably these this forced assimilation. So the whole idea was to eradicate languages and culture. But miraculously, things that have survived, I would say particularly in Florida. In Florida is really a stronghold. But the way they've survived in Florida is a kind of a policy of avoidance of immigrant populations. And so this is why it's kind of hard to meet native Floridians. Pretty tough nowadays. Anyway, again, that's just, I don't know if that was your question.
Well, more broadly, John, I would say that Native or Indigenous delegations to the United Nations, for example, have stressed the importance of climate stewardship, which is now an existential threat, at least to countries who face being wiped out, Pacific and other island nations, for example. Now, Rahia Khanum, Hand of the Cause of God, Rahia Khanum, said this, wrote this, and I think it's very important to consider with this idea of outreaching with Indigenous land and spiritual acknowledgement. She wrote on March 9th, 1961, I could see the American Indians straighten their shoulders when I asked for their forgiveness for the injustices my race had done them, and when I praised their great past. I think this should inspire us.
Thank you for that. I took a moment to absorb that myself. So all of this being said, how can people learn more? Is it this course on Wilmette Institute that people can come and learn more about, well, not just what you guys are talking about, but these concepts we're referencing today?
Well, there is the series, first of all, where, let me click the link here, the Indigenous Messengers of God series, which now has 86 articles. And you see all of the articles are posted online here.
We only see the PowerPoint right now. That's all that's being shared.
Oh, okay. Let me quit the PowerPoint.
So it would be the screen share itself. You'd want to reshare the screen probably. If you can see it and we can't, it would be the way you shared your screen.
Okay, click screen share again.
Yes.
Can you see the series now?
Yes, now we can. Yes. Okay.
So in answer to that question, one resource is to go here. The course that Kevin and I are offering again begins in late February. They're accepting registrations now, I believe. So, it's up to the interest and inclination of our listeners how they want to learn more, but this is my recommendation.
Okay. So as people go to Baha'u'llah.org, they type in that in the URL box, Baha'u'llah.org/series/Indigenous-Messengers-of-God/. All right. And there's 86 articles, you said, right?
With more to come, God willing.
So for all of you watching, if you could mind scrolling down, Chris, down this beautiful view here. See all these articles, everyone. These are articles written on this subject. There's over 5 pages of this showing on Baha'u'llah.org. You are more than free to read this. It's available to everyone. And actually, I had no clue this has existed until now myself. So I appreciate you sharing this with all of us. I remember reading one of these articles at one point, but I had no clue it was so voluminous and available to look at all this. This is beautiful. I see that, right? Go up really quick. I see that painting in the middle. It says Breath Maker and Seminole Sacred Tradition. There's an
Yeah.
even article on this.
Yeah, I just showed that article, John. So that's part 40. There's 4 articles on Aboriginal Indigenous traditions, by the way.
So you have 4 on Aboriginal, and that would be, when we say Aboriginal, are we talking about the Australasian Aborigines?
Yeah, I know in Canada they use the word Aboriginal more than Indigenous, but yeah, I'm talking about Australian Aboriginal. There's a book written by this gentleman. I think the book is called Wisdom Man.
Yes,
And this
man.
Joe Clark. Okay, and it's a very important resource. There's also an Aboriginal, Australian Aboriginal Baha'i who recently passed away, Philip Oba. I'm in contact with his son to try to get an excerpt from his book, a short book on Aboriginal spirituality and the Baha'i faith.
This is amazing. So you have writings about the Aboriginal peoples of Australasia. This is amazing. So everyone that's looking at this, please take the time to research on BahaiTeachings.org. If you're interested in this subject to learn more, there definitely is more to look at. And is there a way that people can, if they have questions on these subjects, maybe get clarification? Do they comment on BahaiTeachings.org? And is that how you guys would be able to respond? How can people understand more if they have a question on one of your articles?
Well, John, they used to have an algorithm where the authors would be sent messages if there are comments, but that's not functioning right now. So I suppose they could email us, or you could email you, and then you can ask Kevin and I what our response is, and we'd be happy to respond. Right, Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah, so please send your emails to admin@clearwaterbahais.org. Jeremiah has also pasted the link for this BahaiTeachings.org link that you are looking at now here in the Zoom chat. And Jeremiah, if we could post that as well into the video comments for those on Facebook and YouTube. But for the contact, please contact us on the website, clearwaterbahais.org, and we can get back to you. And also the email directly to contact us is admin@clearwaterbahais.org. That's CLEARWATER, Clearwater Baha'is, BAHAIS.org. So it is about 12:30 now, and we did start late, and we appreciate that you guys were able to continue this, and more importantly, present this beautiful subject for everyone who's getting a first time glance at this. For those of you on Zoom, Jeremiah has pasted the link. Please take a look as we're about to close off for today. Dr. Buck, Mr. Kevin Locke, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. We hope that you guys can come on again sometime and speak about one of the beautiful subjects that we have here in the series on Clearwater Baha'is, as well from Baha'i Teachings. Is there any final notes that you may want to give?
I'd like to say it's been an honor and a privilege to work with Kevin.
Yeah, it's been wonderful too. It's great. I'm really so happy that that Chris is lending his research, his acumen to this topic. And one more thing I'll mention is that there is a Seminole community there in Tampa. I think they have a cultural center there in the Tampa Bay area, but I don't know the details. I think you can probably find it online. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Definitely have to go take a look. And that is in Tampa, you're saying, right?
Yes, Tampa, right.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Not too far from here. Tampa,
Right.
Florida, everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
We all appreciate it again. And please, for those of you who are watching this, please Remember, if you missed something, you want to look at it, we have this video on YouTube and on Facebook. Take a look. We have our next talk next week on Sunday at 11 a.m. Every Sunday, 11 a.m. We thank you all for joining us, and we hope you all have a very beautiful Sunday. And one last thing, we are remembering the 100-year anniversary of the passing of Abdu'l-Baha, which we've observed it starting yesterday. This is especially today, a very special time. And we really thank you for this special occasion. Thank you all.